Here I go. All I need is a glass of milk. Delicious. John says the best we can do is water. Well, you know, life is short, so they say eat dessert first. So I will do that. Listen, it's a real pleasure to welcome all of you here tonight to Agenda Alexandria. Before I begin the formal announcements, since I talked about the delicious donut and the wonderful cupcake, Adnan and Rob, I don't want to leave John out. I don't have a really nice spreadsheet to rave about John, but I do want you to know that John and Joan Renner of Renner & Company let Agenda Alexandria use its meeting room once a month for our Agenda Alexandria board meetings. So we appreciate that, John, very much. I'm Janet Barnett. I'm chair of Agenda Alexandria, and of course I want to thank you so much for being with us. In a few minutes, Frank will give a formal introduction of our guest speakers tonight, our panel members. But for now, I want to take a few minutes to recognize our sponsors. I do this every month, but I think it's important for you to know who they are, and I want to encourage you to use their services. They're small businesses in our city, and they support us, and I'm asking if you have the opportunity to please support them. So I'll start out with our host, the Hermitage of Northern Virginia, Ann Nguyen, State Farm Insurance, Life and Estate Planning, Barbara Anderson, Bruce Johnson, Ivy Hill Cemetery, Frank.
Our services right
Not unless you ate your dessert. Frank Fannin, SunTrust Bank, Gant Redmond, Payton and Braswell, Synergy Home Care, Louis Hoffheimer, Hoffheimer Security and Captain Token, Everly Wheatley Funeral Home, Tobin and Donna James, Honest Air Heating and Air Conditioning, the Potomac Riverboat Company, and finally, Friends of Tim Ahern. And I'm going to take an opportunity to, in a minute, to ask our new guests, people who haven't been here before, to please stand up. But it's important that I remind you that this year's Agenda Alexandria is dedicated to the memory of Tim Ahern, who was to be the chair this year. And he died suddenly in a biking accident in August. And we mourn him all the time. Tonight, though, I'm really happy to introduce to you the youngest member in the room, little Timothy. I know his last name is not Ahern, but it's really hard not to say it. Timothy Barrett, who's 8 months old. He's Tim Ahern's grandson. What would we do without Ben Lyon and Vilma Zeffers? I don't know. They provide our sound. This is going to be played on YouTube. They come each week with their wonderful, fabulous students and record our meetings. So can we give it up for Ben, Vilma, and the students of T.C. Williams? May I ask our board members to stand and give them a shout out while you're at it. If you don't mind, Natalie and Wanda and some of the others who are here for the first time, would you please stand up and let us welcome you properly to our meeting? Thank you for being with us. A couple of things that I want to tell you on your table. Well, first of all, after the presentation, you'll have cards, little pieces of paper to write your questions. Board members will come around and collect them, and we will present them to the panel members. Also on your table, you have a card that looks like this, which was made by Terry Hauser, one of our board members, and we thank you, Terry, for that. We're asking you to please nominate someone that you think would like to serve on our board, and you can nominate yourself. We will have elections in May, and the nominating committee will be meeting this week, so please complete these forms and think about who you would like to see sit on this Agenda Alexandria board. Also on the same form is a place that you can write down the kinds of programs you'd like to see for next year. Lots of hot topics coming down the road, and we look to you, our membership, for giving us some ideas. Finally, this little spring to action, Agenda Alexandria will be a part of the spring to action. It's a give money email. So you'll be getting lots of emails on that day from many nonprofits. We are participating this year, so if you find it in your hearts to support Agenda Alexandria, we would very much appreciate that. Okay, well now we're going to get the program rolling. Enough of me. I'm going to eat my donut and my cupcake. And I'm going to ask Frank Fannin to come up, who will be, he's on our board, and he's also going to be the moderator for tonight. Frank has a long history in the city of Alexandria. Whenever there's a fundraiser or anything that is being done to help people, you can usually see Frank Fannin present. He's pretty tall, so you can see Frank and that little zero that he has on his head there, Frank. He is a loan officer for SunTrust Mortgage and has been there since 1995. We are so proud of Frank's cousins. They are fourth generation owners of T.J. Fannin and Sons. They are on Duke Street. The business has been family owned and operated since 1885 when it opened as a coal and lumber yard. And today T.J. Fannin and Sons is the oldest owned family business in Greater Washington. And I think you all know that Frank served on our city council from 2009 to 2012. So with that, Frank, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. You can introduce our esteemed panel. And once again, welcome and thank you for being with us.
All right. Well, thank you, Janet. Thank you. And let's get over here. Well, thank all of you for being here tonight. We have a wonderful program in store. Profit and Loss, story from small business owners in Alexandria. And we're very lucky to have an esteemed panel here with us tonight. Three great Alexandrians, John Renner, Rob Caprica, and Adnan Hamidi. They've all started their businesses here in Alexandria, and we're going to hear from them tonight on a lot of different topics and questions. So as the evening goes forward, feel free to write down some of the additional questions that we haven't already prepared. But what we're going to do is start out with sort of the first question to all of you. As you can see, you have the full bios of these three wonderful business owners in the program in front of you, so I'm not going to read them all through. But we'd just like to start with John Renner. And as you know, John's been involved with the community for years. Him and his wife, Joan, have both been presidents of the Rotary Club, the Chamber of Commerce, and John grew up in Arlington. So, John, why don't you take about 2 minutes or so and just give us a little bit of your background, but most importantly, what was the leading motivation for you to start your own business here in Alexandria?
Well, is this on? Okay. I'm glad to be here tonight and share my thoughts with you all. I grew up in Arlington, so I'm a native Arlingtonian, and I came to a firm in Alexandria about 1979. It was a large firm, and I noticed that we weren't servicing the clients the way we should be, the way I wanted to service them. So in 1983, I went out and started my own practice, and I had a good following of those clients at that time. And, you know, the best thing we can do is, and our success is give you the service that you deserve and speak your language and understand. And that's really why I did it. You know, it's very satisfying to work with small businesses and different people. So that's why I did it, and I think we've been fairly successful at it.
Okay. So next we have Rob Krupika. Rob went to the University of Virginia. He spent his early years in California. He's served here on the Alexandria City Council, and he's recently out of public office, and he's become a business entrepreneur. So Rob, why don't you give us a little background on yourself that I didn't hit there, and also tell us what motivated you to open your businesses here in town.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks for having me here tonight. I always wanted to have a business, and it just took a little while for me to figure out which was the right fit for me. And during that time, I was able to do some public service and work with some nonprofits and do a lot of really interesting work. For me, starting a small business meant I needed to find an opportunity that would continue my commitment to the community and would continue my commitment to work with nonprofits and kind of organizations that had an impact on kind of the greater good. And I found Sugar Shack Donuts when I was serving the legislature in Richmond. One of my friends said, "You got to go try these donuts," and I did. And then I made the mistake of having them delivered to my office every week, which meant I had a long line of interns and aides all outside my office every morning trying to get donuts. And when session ended, I asked the company if they wanted to open up a shop in Alexandria. And they actually said no. They said, "We're too busy, we're growing really fast, we can't handle it." They were about 8 months old at the time. But the guy who called me was a college buddy. And he said, and I hadn't talked to him for 20 years, he's like, "Rob, you should do it." And I took a step back and I said, I don't know anything about running a restaurant. I don't know how to bake. This doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. And I came down to his business and I watched it operate for a couple days. And I did the overnight shift and learned how to make donuts at night and talked to the staff at night. And I sat in the store all day long and watched the customers come in the door. And it was one of the most amazing things, because there were two big ahas that hit me that day. The first is everyone left the donut shop happy. No one leaves the donut shop unhappy, unless something very strange has happened. And the second thing was it was an incredibly diverse group of customers. It was every walk of life, every color, every creed. It was really fantastic. And I don't just say that because it sounds good to say. It really was true. It was an incredibly diverse group of customers. And I said, any product that can make people happy and bring together folks from this many different walks of life has to be worth doing. So we wrote an agreement and I jumped off the cliff, had no idea what my parachute would look like, and just hoped it would work. And here I am.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Okay, our third guest tonight is Adnan Hamidi. He grew up in California also, and he's lived in Alexandria since about 1993. And he's had his business on King Street, Alexandria Cupcake, and it's doing fabulous. And so, Adnan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what motivated you to open the business here in Old Town?
Thank you, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My story begins back in 1993. As a newlywed, I moved to Virginia from Northern California. And I gave up a law enforcement career back then, so I did love donuts, by the way. Cops and donuts go together. So once I moved out here, I dabbled from law enforcement into practicing law, and I decided to pursue law school. And while in law school, I stumbled upon a great opportunity in the design industry. And believe it or not, took a leap of faith and just dropped out of law school and decided I want to actually pursue this, and had a great time. And a few years back, in 2009, I was working for an Italian studio in Georgetown. And my wife and I were discussing, we need to open up our own business. And as long as I can remember, I always wanted a restaurant, but without the hassles of a restaurant. Unheard of, but you can try. But eventually we came up with desserts, and then we narrowed it down. And having been in the legal side of things, I knew that you had to specialize in something. And by specializing, you can create a niche basically, and create quite a demand for it. So no sooner that my wife and I decided that we will open up a cupcake bakery and name it Alexandria Cupcake, Georgetown opened up. And that was the testing period. Within 2 weeks of Georgetown opening up, we knew we were on the right track. And we I quit my job, left, and found a great spot in Alexandria, and opened up there, and it's been on the go since then. And when we opened, it was not the best time for the economy. So I had one phrase sticking through my head, and that was attainable novelty, even in difficult times. It's easier to spend $3 to $4 on a cupcake than it is to pay $70 for a cake. And I think the rest has been history, and King Street's been great.
Great. All right. Well, I know all of you, as you've grown your business through the years, you meet challenges, you run into a lot of things that you didn't think you'd have to deal with. So I'll open the floor here. Any of you can jump in and answer our first question. but what did you see as the biggest challenge that you weren't expecting, or the biggest surprise that came to you being a new business owner?
I guess I'll start. Sure. Having owned other businesses in the past, I guess I was not used to. I was used to basically going to one office in the city and applying for a business license and basically getting everything taken care of. The food industry was a lot different, and it was quite a hurdle for me to really get a grasp on what steps I needed to complete. I must say that once I approached the city of Alexandria, there were a lot of steps that were not connected, I should say, that basically led me from one path to the other, and I did not see how this would come together at the end. And I know I'm being broad, but for the sake of time. But eventually, I had to actually sit down with a city councilman and discuss it and get a good idea of, okay, you have to follow steps 1, 2, and 7, 8, 9, then you can accomplish 4, 5, and 6. So eventually it made sense, but if I had not had that guidance, I might have given up actually, because it was quite a hurdle. So from the startup perspective, that was the hardest thing I had to deal with, and it was a few months of pulling my hair out, trying to get some answers, really.
So I have two, and they're not city process. My city process experience was actually really positive, but I think I also had a pretty good clue as to how it worked, so I may have had an advantage. The two biggest things that still keep me up at night a little bit, but not as much as they used to. One is HR. You know, being in the retail business, or the services business, restaurant, what have you, and even as an accountant, a lot of our time is HR issues. I spend an enormous bulk of my time on HR issues. Hiring, training, mentoring, figuring out who needs to be fired or doesn't need to be fired, or can we help them so they don't have to be fired. Those kinds of issues, if you're not prepared for it going in, can really overwhelm you. It is not an area where there's a lot of support networks for you. You have to kind of figure it out as you go. At least that's been my experience so far. And we've been making it work really well, but it's certainly a much larger amount of time than you would ever guess. I think the only thing that helped me prepare for it a little bit was politics, where you're dealing with so many people all the time that there's almost an HR element to the public service part of the job. But HR and public service, absolutely a big thing. And in the restaurant industry, really hard to find people with specific skills because they're in high demand. So if you have a specific skill, like I wanted a new head chef for my bar, Captain Gregory's, finding that head chef took much longer than I expected. Months and months and months, because you wanted to find the right person, they had the right skills, and it's a tough market out there to find people. That's number one. Number two is getting financing. Financing's hard, and was harder than I expected. I thought I could go to my nationally known big bank and say, I need a loan to do X, and they would say, sure, we'll work with you on that. But that's not what they said. What they said is, gosh, you're a really great retail customer, but your company's way too small for us to do business with you, so go someplace else. Literally, that's what they said. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically it. If there weren't small community banks in the world, businesses like mine wouldn't exist. Small community banks will take a risk on a business because they know you, the entrepreneur, because their money is local, because they come into your business and they frequent it themselves. They will take risks on businesses that the big guys don't, and my loyalty to small community banks has increased tenfold since I started this.
Well, we see lots of businesses come and go, and what I kind of talk about is fulfilling your dream. You know, you get out of your business, and you guys have been very fortunate to fulfill your dream, that you were able to work your way through the maze of the city, and it is a maze. It's like I got you, because you can go down one path, and then all of a sudden, somebody else comes in and says, no, that's not right. I got you, basically. But that's the biggest issue I see with a lot of the small businesses in Alexandria, or any place. If somebody's got a great idea, what do? They go out and get the rental space right away. We get our lease space. We want to be on King Street. Well, that's just the beginning. And then they find out, what do we have to do to this building to make it compliant for my business? And then all of a sudden they get inventory, if they got inventory. And so they've got all this money tied up. And 6 months later, so they still haven't opened the door, because of all the bureaucracy and this I got you attitude. And it's not a friendly city hall. I mean, you know, if you stop to think about it, revenue and finance touches every business in the city twice. They do it for business licenses and personal property. And there's no help. You go to their front window and it's like, you can't do this. What do you mean I can't do that? They tell me that all the time. I know better, but they don't give you the friendly attitude or the help that you need to get your business going. They don't really say, we've got one of the best resources in town with the SBDC. You know, it's a small business development center. They can help you with your marketing plan. They can help you with all that. And the city supports it to a certain extent, but it's like a well-known secret. Some of the businesses, the more successful ones, have been able to use that resource and make it work, because they really make them go through a marketing plan. Hopefully they haven't released their space yet, because that's the thing that really kills you, because the minute we were talking about it at dinner, you know, you could go into your space and all of find out that you want to do a couple of improvements, and all of a sudden you've got to put sprinklers in because it's not up to code, or you have to ADA or any of that stuff. And you don't know about all this stuff. What you don't know is really the scary part. And then they fail. And what they've done is they've gone and they went out and got all their savings. They got their 401k, all the retirement just plugged into the thing. Can't get good people because they can't afford them. You know, it's hard to get good people, and they don't want to work the hours. Or it's people that have this, well, my best buddy and I want to do this, and all of a sudden one of them says, this is too hard, I don't want to take any more time to do this. And it's left to one. So I think there's a lot of pitfalls, but the biggest thing is just understanding what you're getting into.
And John, with you doing tax returns for a tremendous amount of people in the city, do you see a lot of these entrepreneurs on the front end or the back end, or a little bit of both? So when you have do you get customers come to you after they've opened a business, or do you have some people consult with you before they get going?
Well, it's kind of a little bit of both, but most of the times they come in when it's too late. You know, afterwards, after they've signed the lease and they found out that they have to put $200,000 in their building because they have to be to meet certain zoning requirements and stuff like that, and they've got all this inventory. So it's kind of late at that point. I usually, if they come in first, I usually help them, send them over to SBDC to make sure they got free counseling. It's free. I mean, it's really good.
So everybody in life makes mistakes, and you can either learn by your mistakes or other people's mistakes. So this is to Adnan and Rob, and you can answer this any way you want, whether it was your mistake or someone told you something to avoid. But what's the biggest mistake that you think new retailers make?
Think about that for a minute. I would say the one mistake that I made, just because I relied on just the sheer popularity of the product, was not to market heavily in the beginning. So as a small business owner that's just starting up, it is worth your investment, in my opinion, to set aside a budget for marketing purposes. It's great when you first open, the buzz is there, but then all of a sudden the crowds do disappear. So you have to actually take the time to invest in marketing. When I first opened, someone did tell me, listen, you're going to have a lot of people asking for donations. I'm sure, Rob, you get hit with that too. And I think it's a pleasure of ours to actually be able to be in a spot where we can help or fulfill a lot of these donation requests. But one of my very good friends told me, you cannot and do not fulfill every request. You can't do it. And I think I made the mistake, just for the purpose of getting the name out there, for the first year, just donating almost any cause, anywhere. And it's not a bad thing, but it did make us struggle just a little bit.
You know, it's funny, I think those are good answers. I don't know if I could add a lot to them. We have certainly had to learn how to kind of tell customers what it is we have available that's for sale. We've tried lots of things. A lot of things have not been successful, and others have, but it's been a learning process. You have to be willing to make mistakes. You know, I think one of the most important things I've tried to do is make sure my team knows that I don't mind if they make mistakes as long as they're trying. And getting them comfortable doing that is tricky, because folks can feel really nervous about giving something away or solving a customer problem in a different way if they think they might get in trouble for being too generous or something. But we work really hard not to in any way be critical if someone's trying to go out of their way to help a customer. But getting your employees comfortable doing that is tricky. And we waited too long to market, I think. It took me a little while to get to the point where I felt like marketing was a necessary part of the business. It's something we now do and we're getting smarter at, but it definitely took longer than it should have.
Okay, good. Thank you, Rob. So Rob is involved with his Sugar Shack Donuts, and there's about, I think, 10 around Virginia, but Rob owns the franchise or the store in Arlington and Alexandria. So I'm going to ask you this question, Rob. Tell me about the startup process and what you went through in Arlington County compared to the city of Alexandria, whether it was easier to do business in which municipality. And then, John, the follow-up to that is going to be on a tax question. You do tax returns for people that are in Maryland, Virginia, D.C., and I'd like some commentary about tax on businesses in those jurisdictions.
So we also have a DC store that's about to open. DC by far the worst, terrible. I don't have very many positive things to say about DC's small business process. It's really, really atrocious. It's clear they are focused on the big tenants and the big companies building the big buildings. They're not all that focused on the small guys opening little storefronts. So the DC process was really quite a nightmare. Arlington was second in terms of nightmare. Arlington has wonderful staff, they're charming and friendly, but they're all in silos and they don't share information back and forth, and they expect you to be the expert on their processes because they certainly don't know them. And it's it can be troublesome to move through that process. The good news there is I think the Arlington board is starting to wake up to that problem, and they're working to fix it, and there's a lot of commitment from their staff and everyone else. They don't have a staff problem in the sense that the staff, they're wonderful people. I just think the way they've set up their procedures doesn't put the staff in a position to actually solve problems. And that's an organizational issue more than and a procedures issue more than anything else. Alexandria was by far the best for me. It was fast, it was pretty efficient, there were no hiccups, everything went the way it was supposed to. But I think, to what John said at the beginning, in all these three cases, but in Alexandria more than any, I knew what I was doing going in. And I think if you've done your homework going in, and your business is prepared going in, and you've figured out your model, and you haven't suddenly signed that expensive lease before you knew what you had to do with it, you've talked to zoning and planning before you signed the lease, you've done all those kind of good homework things, it's not a terrible process. The folks who get themselves into trouble are the ones who get themselves behind the 8 ball financially, and then don't have time to maneuver, and that makes everything stressful and hard.
Well, Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, we all have business licenses, and that's each category, restaurants and professionals and everything. And out of the 3 jurisdictions, Alexandria is the most expensive. And we had that small business task force 2 or 3 years ago, and they recommended that they lower the rates. Bruce Johnson, I think, was the chair of that task force. He got a lot of beat up on that, I think, by the committee members. I know I beat him up, but it was brought out. And the problem with Alexandria, and a lot of times when it comes to taxes, we spend a lot of time talking about it, but the city council won't do anything about it. If you think about it, Alexandria's businesses they say there's 9,600 business licenses in Alexandria. And so, but they can't tell you how many businesses, because a lot of people like me have multiple licenses. And so I could be counted twice or 3 times, in the same way with the stores. But you stop to think about it. When we did the work in 2010 for the commercial add-on tax, our business license base was about $31 million in revenue. Today it's $33 million. That's not a big increase. And in 2012, we had the city was looking at a 10 or actually a 20-year period there. And so Joan and I went back and adjusted the 1992, actually the 2012 business licenses to $1992. And we didn't find any increase at all. So that means we haven't grown our businesses, our backbone. If we don't have our businesses here in the city, the city's not gonna prosper because we're not, we have to have the services. And if we don't encourage businesses to come in, we don't spend money in our businesses, they're gonna go, and it's expensive. And so, to answer your questions, Alexandria is the most expensive. And yet, on the personal property side, all businesses have to pay personal property, that's on your equipment. And, the sad part about Alexandria, I didn't know that, because I practiced in all three jurisdictions, and I find the other ones a little easier to deal with sometimes, of trying to relieve penalties and that sort of thing. I've had clients move in from Fairfax, Alexandria portion of Fairfax that is, and they think, well, gee, I've got my Fairfax license, that ought to be pretty good. So somebody says to them, well, have you gotten the Alexandria license? And I had this big government contractor move in, and they were about 20 days late, 15 days late moving, going down to City Hall. And do you think City Hall said, welcome, gee, we really want this $30 million business and all this other stuff? Revenue Finance says, you're 15 days late, so you owe me $2,000 in penalties. That's a great way to welcome a nice business to Alexandria. It really makes you feel comfortable, doesn't it?
Well, John, thanks for touching on that, because as we know, we're going through the city budget process right now, and we really need to have these businesses succeed in Alexandria, because if the businesses aren't producing, if they're not bringing in the income, it's falling back on the residential property owners. And as you can see right now, they're talking about raising property taxes. So it's very important that these businesses thrive. And so, Robert, Adnan, if either of you could answer this, if you were the mayor, the city council, the city manager, and it was the stroke of the pen, what one or two things would you do to maybe enhance the business community to have more businesses open here?
I like to answer that with actually piggybacking and picking up where John left off. In 2 months, we're going to be opening another location in downtown historical Fredericksburg. And I just want to, it's not a plug, but I just want to give you a comparative analysis of one jurisdiction to another. And then I want to say what I would do to, what I would propose to make it a little bit better. Since November of last year, we had been in touch with Fredericksburg and been discussing a new location with them even before we signed the lease. And we looked at this property and we went and spoke with City Hall, and the minute you walked in, they were very welcoming. What can we do for you? What are you thinking about doing? Oh, new business. Please, you need to see these people. Let me take you over there. I understand they're a little bit smaller, but at the same time, it's just the level of courtesy that we experienced. I mean, I had a smile on my face walking in and walking out. But not only that, one of the things that they did, they said, listen, get your basic summary together, bullet points are fine, and we will hold what's known as a review committee hearing, basically. So we actually got a hearing from this called TRC hearing. And what that was, the heads of every department, zoning, health department, everybody was there to sit down, and they gave us whatever time we needed. And we explained to them, this is what we're planning on doing. And everyone had questions, and then they went ahead and devised a plan for us. They did the research and then sent us the information. You will have to have a change of use. You will have to do this. You will have to do that. So there were no surprises at that point. And on a regular basis, I kid you not, every week we get an email or a telephone call from some official in the city of Fredericksburg saying, we're very excited that you're coming. What does that take? It doesn't take much. And I must share something with you. This morning I walked in City Hall here in Alexandria for another business to have a discussion with somebody. 45 minutes later, I was ready to jump out the window. And it was not a pleasant experience, but I had a business partner with me. Having done business in Alexandria, I knew what was in store, so it wasn't a big issue. Had my business partner gone in by himself, he'd have said, I'm out. This is not going to happen. So one of the things I would say that I think that the city government should look into streamlining the process of prospective business owners coming in. You mentioned SBDC, the Small Business Development Committee. They have a great program. It doesn't take much to mirror that for the city. It doesn't take much. Or have at least one or two point persons that are fairly knowledgeable with the overall process of opening a business. And they can sit down with someone for 15 minutes and say, here's an outline, what kind of business do you have, this is what you will need, get the following information, come back, set up an appointment, we'll be happy to discuss it in detail when you have it. It doesn't take much, I guarantee you it will shave hours and days off someone's timeline.
Thank you. Rob, any thoughts?
I mean, I do think the City Hall can always get better, and I do agree that a higher touch customer service would be really valuable for small businesses coming in now, especially retailers, because the retail market is really challenging. You know, we have now reached a point where retailing in America is going to dramatically change. You know, it's been happening, but now it's happening at a faster clip. We're seeing retailers go out of business. You know, let's face it, who in this room hasn't bought something from Amazon because they could get it faster and delivered to their house? It's where that space is going. So the retailers that have to be successful to make our main streets interesting and vibrant and fun places to walk around at night or to go to dinner, those kinds of retailers have to be making their product on site. They've got to be doing something unique about how they create their product so that it's not replicable in other places. It has to come from that place. It's got to be maker type businesses that are making clothing or art or other items right there on site. And you know, I would even call an accounting firm a maker business because they are doing something right here in town that they're making and creating to serve the local community. And it's something you really want to have face-to-face access to. You don't want your accountant to be millions of miles away and not have an ability to talk to them every once in a while. But the kinds of businesses that are going to make it in Alexandria are going to be the ones that have that on the ground, make it here kind of touch, whether it be a service or a product or what have you. So the City Hall's kind of got to adjust to that. It means you're going to have different kinds of businesses wanting to take up retail space on King Street. I would argue we're probably not equipped right now because King Street is so constrained in what's allowed to go in those retail spaces. I would argue King Street's probably not equipped to be a place that a lot of maker type businesses can go. So we need to look at how our zoning affects the types of businesses that can go into retail spaces. We need to look at how the process lets people move through those things. And then I think we also have to look at how buildings, what we do with our buildings. Old buildings aren't necessarily as equipped to be maker spaces or bakeries or restaurants or other things as they might be to sell some, you know, tchotchkes or t-shirts or wigs. Does anyone know how they're still in business, by the way? But that's so we have to open ourselves up to completely rethink and allow a rethinking of how we let people use spaces and the types of things that go in those spaces if we want to reinvigorate kind of retail and small business in general in the city. Those are not easy things to do. I guarantee you everything I just said will have 100 controversies tied to it, but it's kind of a choice between vacant buildings and not.
And so, ironically, all of you have different age buildings. Your building's probably 100 years old, John, where you work's 50 years old, and Rob, your building's probably 5 years old. So even though you went in there with it being just a few years old, Rob, was it designed as a restaurant, or did you have to do a tremendous amount of retrofit?
No, we had a whole bunch of problems with our building when we moved in. It didn't have any venting systems for restaurants, so we had to build that all in, which was very expensive. They had put the electrical switch box you had to connect your electrical to very far away from all of the retailers, which meant you had to run an incredible amount of copper from your store to the electrical box in order to have electricity on site. It was about $30,000 worth of copper, just copper cable just to get electricity because they hadn't thought through. And then the last great one is the city and the property owner, and I voted for this project, so I deserve a couple bills. I'm responsible. But we didn't think through loading and unloading very well. There's just no good loading and unloading for any of the retailers. It was really terribly done, actually. There's like no excuse for it. We should never let that happen. But in this case, we chose to make a building that has no loading and unloading areas, which makes it terrible on the residents in the morning when my business gets stuff or anyone else gets stuff. It's a real problem, and it's not a fixable problem. So people want to fix it, but there's no solution other than tear down the building and rebuild it. So all of that kind of put in my head the idea that we need to have a better set of kind of standards and guidelines for how we think about retail spaces, because what you end up doing if you don't have persistent folks like me who want to make them fix all that stuff and find a solution, you get lots of yoga studios. And no offense, yoga studios are wonderful. I use some, but we can't have a city of yoga studios. We actually have to have restaurants and other things, and they need more sophisticated systems.
Adnan, take a minute and just touch on when you opened your business in your 100-year-old building, and also some of the issues that you avoided by not putting a table in your restaurant.
Sure.
Or your store, I should say.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not a restaurant. That was the important part. Well, anytime you get into an historical building, you know you're going to have certain issues that are going to pop up, especially with the city when it comes to meeting code. One of the things I faced, originally the plan was to have seating on the location. And quickly I learned that that's a no-no. The district is deemed an historical district, so you have the BAR involved, and not only that, you can't make many changes. And I did not even want to spend the money to actually have plans drawn and propose it just to be knocked down. So some of the biggest issues we ran into is basically ADA compliance. I mean, you cannot change the outside. I'll give you an example. The front there are stairs in the front, and you step up, and that's the retail area when you come inside. The counter's there. The second half, the back of it, which is blocked off to the public, is the kitchen area. And then in the far back is a bathroom, and then there's storage in the back. Well, we cannot put a lift in the front. It's just not going to happen. No one's going to allow that. Well, then I was asked, it was suggested to me that I put a lift in the back. Well, you can't come in from the back area where the kitchen is. The health department says no. And if I were to put any seating, then I automatically become a restaurant. And then by the virtue of becoming a restaurant, I have to provide a bathroom accessibility. Well, there's not a lot of room. That's the problem. And then they said, well, no, they can come in from the back and use the restroom again. Or they can go through the middle area. Well, that's the kitchen. So there's no way. It just will never happen where we could actually have public seating in that location. Or provide a bathroom for someone. So what I don't see, and I work with people, is an exemption clause somewhere. I think, Rob touched upon this a little bit, and I think there has to be, I know there's a supplemental code that is out there that addresses issues like these, but the city has not made it very easy to listen to the supplemental code and actually address that. And I'm dealing with something similar in Fredericksburg, but I'm falling under the exemption, and the city has zero problems with that. So yeah, there are issues when it comes to. Okay, great.
Well, I have a few more questions to ask here, but if anybody has any questions from the crowd, I think Michael Pope's going around collecting the questions, so feel free to give them to Michael, and he'll bring them up here to me. I'm going to ask a question to John Renner about succession planning, not only for your business, but for other businesses. So think about that for a second, John, while I transfer the question about marketing. So everybody, whether you're 5 years old or 85 years old, likes sugar, okay? So when you guys market your business, are you guys targeting kids, middle-aged people, older people, or do you go after any type of demographic to sell donuts and cupcakes to?
The range that I target is 1-year-old to 99-year-old. I just think that, Rob and I might, and I'll let him answer, but we might be on the same boat when it comes to our target audience. We have products that are kind of targeted toward the same crowd. I think that we target heavily people that are of age to be married. That's a big thing, basically, when it comes to our marketing. But in all reality, for almost any occasion, I think you can find cupcakes and donuts. For almost any occasion, from weddings to birthdays to just friends getting together over dinner. So I think I'm probably going to skew your marketing timeline because we have such a wide target.
Yeah, we're probably a little bit more tight than that in terms of where we target, but very similar. We're looking at, we certainly look at weddings and life events, we look at birthday parties, and we do a lot of targeting focused on catering and things like that, as well as, because we're a breakfast item, encouraging people to bring donuts to the office, and so hitting people who kind of fall into that niche as well. So it covers quite a gamut. Yeah.
Okay. So when anybody opens a business, obviously the goal is to have fun and make money. And so if you continue to do that, you'll be able to have your business go on for a long time. So John, I think you're having fun and you're probably making money. So you've been doing this for 35 years. So give us a little idea, John. Maybe you can answer this personally for your business. Have you thought about succession planning, how much longer you're going to work? What would you do with your business? Would you sell it? And then what do you advise your clients if they built up a successful business and maybe they could have children carry it on, but if not, what do you suggest business owners to do when they're getting near retirement age with a successful business?
That's a problem everybody's facing right now. I've got small retail clients all over, and it's been a family-owned business. The generation, my generation's taken it over. They've done very well with it. The next generation doesn't want it. And how do you pay people? You know, the big thing in the retail and every place is you bring in people, they want to make money too. And the only way you're going to keep good people is to pay them well and treat them like they're part of the family. And so you've got to build up this camaraderie within. At the same time, you still got to do, as the owner, you still got to do all the marketing. I mean, yeah, it's great to have your legacy go on. The Fannons are great with that, with their oil business. How long will that go? Will the next generation be able to do it? Everly Wheatley, they sold out. Their next generation has kind of not done it. We've taken a position in our firm that we've tried to get younger people in the firm to take over and do things and train them. But you know, it's like Rob said, you bring somebody in, you spend a lot of money in the training. You spend a lot of money trying to get them up to the point. And in today's world, it's such a mobile world that they don't stay that long. I don't know what you do with your managers, but you know, if you can keep people from a year, you're doing pretty well. If you keep them 2 years, you're doing very well. And we've been lucky in our firm, we've been able to keep people 5, 6, 10 years, besides Joan and I. But we have to think about that in our business, just like everybody else does. Or you're going to go out of business. And the thing is, who wants your business after you've done it? You know, if you're in retail, unless you have a real specialty store, if you're selling appliances, you know, Brian Scarf sells appliances. Do you sell out to them? They don't want you. They'll just put you out of business. So you have to be very selective. It's really training people, keeping the people, and trying to make your mark in the world. And you build a brand. I know we've built our brand. Hopefully the Renner brand in the city in Northern Virginia is a good brand. And our younger people like that. We talk about succession planning, we talk about different things, and they said, as long as we're around, we're not going to change the name because we have that brand. You just like Alexandria Cupcakes. You're going to be Fredericksburg Cupcakes, or you're going to be Alexandria Cupcakes in Fredericksburg Cupcakes. But you're going to build your brand, and everybody's going to know you as Alexandria Cupcakes here and Fredericksburg Cupcakes. Just like we're Renner and Company for CPAs here, people know us. And if you change the name, then you start all over again. They realize that. So I think I don't know, it's kind of roundabout, but it's trying to get the right people in. And Rob talks about how do you get the right manager in so he can go out and start another store or do the strategic planning. We do spend a lot of time doing admin. So.
Thank you, John. This is Adnan and Rob. So both of you have retail business, high turnover employees in retail, and Rob, we understand you've made a special commitment to hiring local community members. What are some of your biggest challenges with having these employees, and any commentary just about personnel?
So sure. When we opened the business, we decided we would make a commitment to hiring kind of people from the community, kind of regardless of where they were before they found us. And we work with a group called Together We Bake, which teaches female ex-offenders how to work in kitchens. We started with a number of Together We Bake employees, and actually still have a number of Together We Bake employees. Some have graduated to other bigger jobs, some have stayed with me since the very beginning in Alexandria. We also have hired other ex-offenders just through the normal course of things. And You know, I can say one thing about that particular subset of my employee group. You wouldn't know who was who. They're all wonderful. In fact, I would argue some of them are better employees than my non-ex-offenders because they have, I think, a little bit more thankfulness that they have a job and they're more committed to the work and they recognize, you know, they're trying to kind of build their lives up and they appreciate that we're kind of giving them a chance to do that. So I have a really good feeling about those employees and feel pretty happy about them. In general, though, the biggest challenge with employees, DC's a tight labor market for the services industry, really tight. And I'm trying to hire lots of people all the time. Our biggest challenge is finding people who have the basic kind of teamwork and cooperation skills that you need to just be successful in any workplace. I don't need people who can do advanced math for most of the time. A little bit is necessary. I don't need people who have really high executive skills or, you know, business skills, those kinds of things. But I have a lot of people in my store working at any one time. They've got to be able to work well together. And I think the thing that has surprised me most on the HR side is how poorly our schools prepare people to do that. We're better at the book stuff. We're actually not as good at the, can they just work together without getting mad at each other all the time? And can they just work together without yelling at each other or communicate well with each other? You know, people get chips on their shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. That part of the job surprised me. I'm used to it now and I'm better at dealing with it, but it is absolutely one of the hardest parts about kind of the service industry labor force is you're dealing with folks whose ability to interact with each other can sometimes not be as high as you would expect.
Any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Rob made an excellent point about, you know, hiring from the local community, something we strive to do as well. And he also made a great point about the employee's ability to work well together. We hire two sets of employees. For one, that's going to be somewhat of a career path or a stepping stone toward a career path. Someone that wants to open up their own bakery, or someone that is actually interested in continuing baking and take that somewhere. So for those people, usually a full-time job, they stick around for quite a bit. But the personnel that's actually working the storefront, helping customers, that's where we see some of the problems that we run into, and I would say in that group a higher turnover rate than our bakers and everybody else, or even managers. The biggest problem we run into again is just, like Rob said, the ability to get along. And not just that, everybody is doing this nowadays. And that's a big no-no in my bakery.
So mine too.
Yeah, absolutely. If I see you, we're going to have a discussion. So you're here to work. And I think the hardest concept for the younger generation is for them to understand what their requirements are at a job, that they have work ethics. What does it actually include? And I think Rob touched upon a very good point, and maybe that's a discussion for later, that our kids coming out of school today are not fully prepared to be in the real world. Just because you say, yes, I'll take the job, or you applied, doesn't mean you get to talk to your friends all day, doesn't mean that you get to text all day long, doesn't mean that you throw a temper tantrum because things didn't go your way. So I would say our struggles lie more in the younger crowds that are working the storefront.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a lot of questions on the table here about taxes, business improvement districts, this type of thing. So let's start with the first one. John, I'm going to have you answer this. It seems the gross receipts tax is very onerous to small businesses. Do you agree or disagree? Hold your thought on that. But also, the business improvement district is being talked about in Old Town. When Rob and I were on the city council, there was a proposal to do a commercial add-on tax, which put an additional tax on commercial buildings. We didn't do it at that time. So right now, there's a proposal for about 700 properties to have an additional 10% tax approximately on their property. Your business is in the zone, yours too aren't. So maybe you could give us some commentary. If this business improvement district passed to you, it cuts into your profit margins. Any commentary, your thoughts on it, or the idea of it would enhance King Street and you'd get more business.
Sure. I look at the bid with two sets of eyes. One, as a business owner whose business will fall within the bid. Second, as a member of the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce that has to make a decision that collectively what is best for the businesses in the city of Alexandria. So as a business owner, I ask one simple question. If I am assessed an additional tax, am I going to be able to recover that tax and then some? If it is there for the enhancement, then I need projections on that enhancement, and solid projections, not just, it'll make your business better. That's pretty broad. And as a board member for the chamber, I have to look beyond that. I look at basically what services are being proposed under the bid, and how many of those services actually run parallel or duplicate city services which should already be in effect and being carried out to their maximum. And the question I ask is, if they are not being carried out to their maximum, then we need to look at what's happening. Not all of a sudden implement an add-on tax. But if I have a clean slate on this, if someone can actually show me that, prove to me that this will be a good thing, that this is going to enhance business in town, that this will bring more revenue, more businesses, and I don't have an issue with it. But until I'm shown that, I owe it to the business owners to, look at this with a grain of salt.
Gotcha. Thank you. So John, back to your question about the gross receipts tax on small businesses. Is it very onerous here? And I believe Alexandria has the state maximum on that, is that right?
Right. The Code of Virginia tells you, allows the jurisdictions to charge a certain fee rate for every category of business. And just like Fredericksburg is at the highest rate too. I don't know if you found that yet or not. But, and Virginia Beach, one of the cities down the Tidewater area. But it is a tough tax, because what it's doing, it is taxing our revenue, our gross revenue. And that's not really a fair tax, If you did it on the bottom line, we can manage the bottom line, the city wouldn't get any money. But, I've talked to a lot of people in City Hall, and my practice is in 3 or 4 in all 3 states. And so when I take my license and divide it up between Maryland, DC, and Alexandria, I can save $4,000 or $5,000 in taxes just because DC does it based on the bottom line, basically. It's a minimum $250 on the first $1 million of your business, if you manage your bottom line properly. If you go over $1 million, it's $1,000. So if you take 58 cents per 100, which is the professional rate, and compare that compute what that is, that's a lot of money. So, and doing work in other jurisdictions, I can go into Fairfax County and pay 31 cents for my business license for the work I do in Fairfax County. So yes, it is very, and even though they say the first $100,000 is only $50, just going through the whole mechanism is tough. And I think they really need to do something. $30 million to the city revenue, they could get it someplace else besides just hitting businesses.
Okay, so here's another question from a small business owner. The City Council and Planning Commission remain obsessed by pushing condominiums and more housing into the city that's not generating revenue. The city businesses in Old Town are getting killed with more expensive parking. How can us store owners continue to stay in business, and what do we need to do to be heard by the City Council? Because I don't know if anybody has an answer up here, but I'll try to maybe even answer this one. So the first thing, I do want to thank John Chapman, because I believe he's one of our city council members and he's the only one here tonight. So John, thank you for being here and listening to this, and let's give it a round for John. So to answer the question, I think email the city council, call the city council. That's the wonderful thing that Rob and I enjoyed about being on the city council. You connect with us. You can talk to us. You can't probably get through to the governor. You're not going to get through to your congressman without a little hassle. But call your city councilman. We read the emails. So send the emails out, and that would be my suggestion.
I would just, I guess I would say 2 things. Yeah, definitely communicate with your city council about specific issues. I think parking is becoming, it's always going to be an issue. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where we can be a city where we don't have a parking issue. There's not really a city in the world that doesn't have a parking issue of some type, but it doesn't mean we can't always be working to make it better and improving it, and we should be doing that, and we should be vigilant about that. I'm not one of the biggest fans of the heavy residential emphasis of development right now. But I also have, I think, become a little bit more pragmatic about it over the last few years, since I haven't had to look at it through a political lens. You know, the reality is our region is overbuilt commercially. We're not going to see commercial being built. We can talk about it. Anyone running for office or in office who tells you that there's some magic secret way they're going to get lots of commercial built in the city is blowing smoke at you. You know, we are so overbuilt as a region commercially that it's just not going to happen. But there is demand for condos because a lot of empty nesters want to live in condos in cities like Alexandria, so we're seeing an influx of people who are retired or semi-retired. There's a lot of folks in those single-family condos and high-rises who also run small businesses, and that's kind of the point that I wanted to kind of leave with, which is a lot of our residential now has small businesses in it. A lot of our apartments have small businesses in it. There are people throughout Alexandria running small independent consulting businesses out of their houses every day. And you see them when you walk around the city because they go to the coffee shops and they go visit, you know, different places they can get Wi-Fi, and then they go back to their place to do whatever other work they need. But we are a city that has all of these hidden small businesses that we don't see and we don't interact with, but they are there. So a lot of those folks building, kind of moving into those condos are small business owners, but they're just independent, single shingle kind of small business owners. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of the business world going. More and more people with professional skills are going to be independent operators who move from project to project and company to company. And we need to be a city that's accommodating that. And then hopefully solve the parking problems while we're at it.
John's going to follow up on that. We have about 9 minutes left, so I have a couple more questions asked, and then I'm going to ask you guys for some final thoughts here near the end.
A number of years ago, the city had a task force to study the economics in the city. And they came out with what it costs to service a business in Alexandria and what it costs to, it's condos, any residential. And when you stop to think about it, it was updated in a hotel. You know, they collect $1 in tax. It costs the city 6 cents to service that hotel. An office building, it's 84 cents the city gets to keep. And when you get down to the residential, it's 40 cents. So it's costing us quite a bit to have that residential there. And you know, the city has to make a decision. Does it want to be a bedroom community? I think we should have mixed use. I mean, I think, you know, in the West End we have all residential where we live. That's not good because you can't walk to anything. It's suburbia. It's just the way it is. If we can have mixed use office buildings and apartments and retail on the first floor, restaurants where people can walk to and have good transportation to get to them, that would be the ideal. But swapping out good commercial land for residential, it's going to hurt the city in the long run. And we can't, if you stop to think about it, most of our buildings here in Alexandria, retail and office buildings, are Class B buildings. You know, they're not Class A where we can get a Northrop Grumman or a big Marriott or Hilton. You know, we didn't get Hilton in because we didn't have a building big enough for them. We did get the Science Foundation because we were able to, first, Hoffman owned the land, so he didn't have to pay any mortgage on the land. Second, they worked out a deal and made it a special taxing district for that, so it cost the city a little bit of money. But if you think about it, it's supposed to generate 60 to 90,000 hotel nights. That's a lot of revenue to the city when you figure out the taxes. So we really have to think about in really residential's cars, businesses. There are people coming otherwise.
Thank you. This is an HR question for retailers, so I guess Rob Rodnan, if you can answer this, I don't know the answer. Is it lawful for a business to require an hourly employee to work 80 hours a week with 1 day off? What are the laws on how many hours you're allowed to have your employees work?
You got to pay them time and a half. You got to pay them overtime.
Okay.
If they want to work the overtime, they can, but you have to pay them the overtime.
And there's no maximum amount of hours they could work?
No, not that I'm familiar with, but it becomes impractical after a point. But most of the time, if you're managing your labor costs, your overtime is not something you're very fond of.
I got you, okay. One more question, I was here earlier on the bid. So a lot of these commercial leases have the tenant paying the taxes as opposed to the landlord. If you guys, feel free to comment if you want to on the way your leases are set up. Is that something, if there was additional taxes to pass on to the tenant? Pass on? It's pretty standard. And John, if you could say overall what you think the percentage on that might be.
Well, on the pass-throughs?
Yes.
I think majority of them, there are some landlords on King Street that haven't done it, but as soon as they get that extra 10 cents on the real estate tax bill, they will. I think the concept of the bid is a good concept. I agree with everybody here that you really gotta think about it. That's what killed it before, is that we really didn't come up with a concrete, what are we gonna spend the money on? How's it gonna do it? What is the city really doing? There's a lot of money in the budget that doesn't get spent on King Street because they don't have the manpower to do it. And the city will tell you that, but the bid can be good because it can clean those sidewalks to make it look as shiny. But is that duplicating the city effort, or can you put the two monies together and have a big pot of money on that?
Great, okay. Last question here, and then we'll get into your final comments. But talk about how social media has helped your business or hurt your business, and what have you found to be most effective marketing tool within Alexandria for you retailers?
Yeah, so social media is probably 80% of my marketing, maybe 90%. It's absolutely how we communicate with our customers. It's how we maintain some kind of unique identity. We do customer service through it. We respond to questions. I really don't actually think my business would be able to be successful without the ability to market and communicate with customers through social media. We do a lot of it in store, obviously, but you know, I'm at home at 10 o'clock, and almost every night I'm getting a message through social media from a mom or an office worker who's trying to get donuts for the morning or needs a birthday donut for some kind of event. And the ability to get those kinds of messages and respond to them is a really big part of how you create a community-centered business.
Gotcha. Okay, great. All right. Well, I really
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead, go
I
ahead.
was just going to add one sentence to what Rob said. I fully agree with Rob. Without social media, we would not be here today. Our business would not be here.
Well, good. Well, I thank all of you three for being here tonight. I think this was a fabulous discussion that we had. I hope the audience got a lot out of it, and we're just going to do some final closeout comments. So, Adnan, Rob, and John, we'll start with you, Adnan, and just you know, give us your thoughts on, you know, what you've been in Alexandria for a long time, and what do you define as success of your business, and what's going to motivate you to keep moving forward and having a business here in Alexandria?
As I said, when I moved here in 1993, what kept me here is Alexandria. So I have a deep, profound love for this city. I don't want you to think I was up here bad-mouthing the city by any means. I absolutely love the city, and I'm glad I started my business here, the bakery business. And I can't think of any other place I would have started. And you know, despite the fact that a lot of things I pointed out, they're pointed out for the reason for us to work on them together. So not only does it make it easier for existing businesses, and it cuts a lot of the red tape, but it also makes it easier for future business owners to come in and sustain reputable businesses, thus increasing the city's revenue. And I would say the biggest success, the biggest reason for our success are you, everyone here. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. If it were not for our community, we would not exist. It's the generous support and the outpouring from the community. It's absolutely fantastic. During the first snowstorm after we opened, we were out there shoveling the sidewalks. And I kid you not, we had about 4 or 5 volunteers join us because they wanted us to open the doors. It was great. And now that's become almost a ritual. You come help us shovel, it's free cupcakes for you that day. So, but yeah, you should use that. But I think that I absolutely love the city. I don't think there's much that's going to change my opinion as far as conducting business in this city. It's just that now that I'm actually involved in the business community and somewhat politically, I do express my opinions a little bit more about how I can see things streamlined.
Yeah, final thoughts. You know, I do what I do every day for kind of 3 really simple reasons. I want people to be happy, and as we've already identified, when you buy donuts, you're going to be happy inevitably. I want to have an impact on my community, and every day we try to find a way to work with nonprofits or schools or other organizations that allow us to kind of help folks further a community mission. And we want to be kind of a community source of happiness and inspiration and kind of fun for people. You know, we give away these Donuts for Good cards, and if you're familiar with them or not, you can come in and buy a Donuts for Good card. It's less than the price of a donut. So you're not paying full price for a donut. It's actually substantially discounted. But the point is to take that card and give it to someone you see doing a good deed. And police officers in Alexandria give them out, and our sheriff's officers give them out. But they give them out to people they see doing something good, and they get basically a free donut. And we essentially take it on the chin for those because we're not getting full price. There's a mom who comes in almost every month and buys a handful of them for her 2 kids. And they walk around the city and they hand them out to people. And she does it as a way to kind of teach her kids about kind of civic, you know, and giving back and living in Alexandria. And I just love that. And I love being a part of a business where that can happen, because that's the kind of community I want to live in, and it's why we're happy to be in Alexandria.
Well, I moved over here from Arlington, I don't know how many years ago now, because Joan told me we should come. She grew up here, and I've loved Alexandria. Everybody told me I didn't think I'd move out of Arlington. But this is a great community. I mean, I get frustrated with the government, and you've heard me spout on it today, but it's a great small town. It's got a great business community, and we like giving back to the community. It's been very good to us, and we do a lot of stuff with the nonprofits. And we really want to help people. That's really what our main focus is. If we haven't helped you, if you walk out of our office, and I tell my staff this all the time, and I tell clients that, I don't want you to walk out of this office just like we walk out of boardrooms saying, having these discussions outside. We used to do it with the chamber and all these other places. Well, what did we really talk about? And you know, all these side conversations, and there was a deer in the headlights. Well, we don't want that to happen with our clients or our friends. And we want to give the best service we can, and I think we do. And Alexandria has been very, very good to us. And it's the best small business, best small big town atmosphere that you can have.
All right. Well, before we close out and give these fellows a round of applause, just want to mention next month we hope to see all of you back here in 4 weeks. Our next program is going to be How Will the New National Science Foundation Impact Alexandria, which is going to be opening on Eisenhower Avenue very soon. We have a great program here. We have a great Agenda Alexandria board. We always need new board members. So if anybody's interested in joining the board for next year, please let Janet or myself know after the program. And also, we're putting together the schedule for next year. So if you have any hot topics you'd love for us to discuss, please let us know. It's on the table. Terry has it in her hand right there, so you could fill those out and give them to Pam or Terry. So once again, I want to thank the 3 of you for being here. You guys are wonderful. Best of luck with your business, and let's give these guys a big round of applause.